So on that horrible day of 9/11, my wife and 3 kids and I lived in Short Hills, New Jersey, which is a commuting town to Manhattan. It was a beautiful day. We commuted in, as always, and got to our trading floor with a company called ICAP on the 55th floor, full of men and women that were trading securities at the time. Typical day, we got ourselves set and ready to go for the day. And all of a sudden we heard a huge, loud explosion. And it was right outside of our window. The plane had hit the North Tower first from the north side. So when it penetrated the building, the jet fuel exploded out the back side of the building. Our trading floor immediately filled with jet fuel fumes and smell. So we knew it was not a little Piper jet that had hit the building by mistake. We knew this was a situation. Everybody immediately got up, headed towards the stairwell. What stairwell, the right stairwell, we had no idea. We just knew we had to get out of the building. And we knew the elevators weren't a great idea. So we got into the stairwells, started heading down, a typical tower or high-rise stairwell, 2x2 steel girder stairwell. It took us about a half hour to get down to the 25th floor. When we got to 25, the second plane hit our building and threw us around like ping pong balls. I'm 6'3", 225, and we were tossed around pretty rapidly and heard horrible noises of bending steel and so forth. We thought it was the end, but thankfully it wasn't. We kept on going, and soon, right soon after we got our feet back together and got up and started going back down again, up coming the other way was firemen dressed in full fire regalia with the air tanks on their back. And so then at that point it became one by one, them coming up, us going down. And as you can imagine, I assume most of those firemen didn't make it out that day. We got down to the lobby floor, and when we walked out of the building and looked up to the North Tower, unfortunately there were people that were jumping out from the fire to get air and to get light. There was none of that available at that time there, and that was pretty horrific. On the sidewalk, embedded in the sidewalk, was a jet engine about the size of an automobile. And that was rattling, to say the least. People were running all over the place for their lives, rightfully so, from every building, not only just from the World Trade Center, but from every building in the area. Nobody knew what was going on, if this was a world war or what. With the towers being hit, at that time, cell phone technology was early, so immediately there was no cell service. I was with a group of about 6 guys from my group that I worked with, and we thought our best course of action was to try to go as far south to the southern point of Manhattan to the Staten Island Ferry. Many crazy things were going on as we were trying to get over to the Staten Island Ferry. People were saying rumors that there's a bomb scare at the New York Stock Exchange, which was halfway between the Staten Island Ferry and where we had come from at the World Trade Center. So we made our way through smaller alley-type streets, if you will. We came upon a dry cleaner, and we thought, well, if there's no cell service, let's see if this guy's landline is working. Thankfully, it was. We gave one of our guys in our group, collected a list of all of our names and our phone numbers to call our family members and let them know that we were alive. And so, not knowing that that was successful, we were still scrambling for our lives to get home. We got down to the Staten Island Ferry. That had shut down because multiple boats had taken so many people that they couldn't get back rapidly enough, and so they had shut that down. We started walking up the East Side Drive, which at the time was a 4-lane major highway that runs up the east side of Manhattan. And that looked like the day of the marathon. It was full of people just trying to get off the island. And at the same time, there were fighter jets buzzing all over the place. We didn't know if this was a war, the end of the world. We had no idea what was going on. You didn't have any cell service. You had no news. You had no intel. Nobody really knew what was going on. So we walked up to Alphabet City, which is about 3 miles probably up the East Side Drive, got off at Avenue A. We found or came into a worker man that had a van, and we asked him if he could please take us to Midtown. Everybody had some money in their pockets, so we gave him whatever money we had, and he agreed to take us to Midtown as far as he could drive. Again, everybody's trying to get off the island of Manhattan, so it was pretty crazy. And we got to about 41st Street, and we found a doorman who worked for a brownstone condo or apartment building, and he was nice enough to let us in. We were covered in soot. As you came out of the building, all the soot and debris that was coming off the building was raining down on us, so we were covered in soot. The doorman gave us towels and bottles of water, which was a godsend because you were covered in you didn't know what.
Was that the moment that you realized, like, I'm safe?
I knew I was safe, and we saw Tower 2. I believe Tower 2, don't mark me on this, but I think Tower 2 went down first. But we saw it go down as we were on the East Side Drive. It crumbled. I knew I was safe from that situation, but you had no idea if this was the United States being put into a war situation, and if there was more, the gravity and what more may have come upon us. So we decided after we had a bottle of water from this man that helped us out and wiped our faces off that we were going to try our very best to get off the island. So we walked over to the West Side ferry station, which takes people on the ferry boat to New Jersey. And that line, no joke, had to be 2 miles long. And again, as you're walking through the streets, there's different people saying, the ferry station's backed up, the ferry's open, the ferry's closed. Penn Station, the train station that would take you to New Jersey, is open, it's closed. So there was all kinds of misinformation being passed around. We decided the ferry boat was not an option. We couldn't wait for a 2 mile long line. So we turned around, and meanwhile, these are not close destinations. These are all big 10 city, 20 city block walks. And so we finally got to Penn Station, and obviously there was lines and lines of people. Long story short, we got on a train. It was packed. It was hostile. People were covered in soot trying to get out of Manhattan. You know, it's everybody's worst moment trying to work and operate in desperate times, and people were hot. And but finally, we got out of Manhattan on the New Jersey train out of Penn Station. I arrived back.
No, go ahead. I just want to ask, what was the moment like when you arrived at your house and you saw your family?
It was pretty emotional. I got back to Short Hills, New Jersey, to the train station about 6 o'clock at night. Again, don't mark me on the exact time. I think the planes hit around 8:30. So that's a long day of emotion and not knowing. Obviously, I'm not complaining. I'm alive, but the embrace that I had with my wife and kids was the greatest embrace I've ever had. And that was sad times. We went to a lot of funerals. We lost a lot of friends, close friends. Everybody in that area that lived on those commuting lines basically was in finance in some form or the other. And a lot of people were affected. Yeah, if you go on that line, almost every stop, there's a dedication with a list of names of people that didn't make it home that day from 9/11 that worked in the World Trade Center.
That day obviously has changed your life.
100%.
How so?
It's made me think about the people, in particular 3 close friends of mine, Kevin Cleary, Tommy Clark, and Richard Madden. These were guys that I grew up with. who were murdered for no reason. And so for me, when I get up in the morning, I try to think, what can I do in their name to make it a better world? And I can't tell you that I'm going to always be the steward of greatness, but I try my hardest to, in their spirit, in the name of 9/11 and the people that were taken from us senselessly, to be the best person I can